Very don't you want to be gentle. Tomorrow, Bezos, Sangje Kedong Zoje Chanama Shangyo Bando Dane Shensu Lage Jegu Jebe Sonam Lola Geshe Sangje Robar Sho Sangje Kedong Zoje Chanama Shangyo Bando Dane Shensu Lage Jegu Jebe Sonam Lola Geshe Sangje Robar Sho Sangje Kedong Zoje Chanama Shangyo Bando Dane Shensu Lage Jegu Jebe Sonam Lola Geshe Sangje Robar 마지막에 타다니에 세계 탐지제 된도 도자라나면 바 양다와 조비 산지제 공부를 뭐지 견이제 토브를 샤고 대도브를 샤위 체도 담비 교열은 뭐지 세년비 그런 자유지 셈지 제 셈베고는 셈브리쇼
Let us cultivate the altruistic motivation seeking complete enlightenment for the sake of liberating infinite, kind, mother sentient beings, and with that kind of bodhicitta motivation or altruistic motivation that we should all participate in this teaching.
No. 당아람 정말로 탑에 아니 타바다 대외 공판이 터고요. 대 토야 대 탑에 탑을 준 거래. 대 탑에 탑 때 라마 노라다 제니 산지 좀 된 데가 누스 까나요. 저장하라서 기라그 가딘 GSTDL 랑강 투바데 그 송바데 냐는 셰토바치 강 셰토바 가르세다 강 소소 강 되게도 냐는 셰토바치 시작으로
I believe that our motivations to learn about Dharma and cultivate it is in order to accomplish liberation and enlightenment, finding such states where we experience everlasting peace and happiness. So we have been very fortunate indeed to be able to educate ourselves on the paths and teachings provided by historical teacher Shakyamuni Buddha out of his infinite compassion and wisdom. And the paths and teachings he provided us are unmistaken paths and teachings. And so we should always remember the great kindness of Shakyamuni Buddha. And through the best of our individual abilities, we should practice the teaching.
나요래 손자 낭배 교육 나라다 뜨바 지중 주인이시 신앙 뜨바 친구들 뜨바 주인이시 아티 나니야 아니야 근데 바로 뜨바 친구에 나니야 양 늦이 컴다스 티 신나 뜨바 친구를 매바 이나야 아티 나니야 아니 컴다스 한번 만나서냐 나 진짜 만나는데 되나요 그래서 다가나 이 태민게 지금 있나요 아니 신나 태민게 아니 람고 토아네 아니 타베 공부 토였는데 이와 이네야 디 나로라다 섬바다 컴다 만라게 전에 아니 도신데 바 deba jobji dosi chashin dosi raise.
I would like to very briefly explain how Shakyamuni Buddha, our historical teacher, gave numerous teachings. In other words, there is a great diversity in terms of principles, philosophical standpoints and approaches within Buddha's teaching. And how has he come about presenting all of those, if you wonder? Buddha, from the very beginning, recognized the different mental dispositions that we have and different interests and capacities that we have as individuals. So in order to suit our mental dispositions, interests and capacities, Buddha provided a very diverse range of teachings and practices. So that's why in Buddhism, broadly stated, we talk about two vehicles or yanas. There is what we call Theravadan yan, or the vehicle of seniors, and then there is the Mahayana, or the great vehicle of bodhisattvas. And so each of these vehicles, was presented, recognizing that different individuals have different interests and mental capacities and would like to pursue, if you will, different spiritual goals, namely nirvana and enlightenment. Now, when we look within each yana or vehicle, whether that be Theravadan yan or the Mahayana, again, Buddha taught a diverse range of principles and philosophical stance and practice approaches. Within, for example, Theravadan yan, Buddha talked about many different what are called schools of tenets or philosophical stance, and that's why sometimes within one sub-school in that tradition or the yana, we could find as many as 18 different groups. And likewise, in the Mahayana, or the vehicle of bodhisattvas, we also find many different philosophical schools of thought. So Buddha provided such a diverse range of teachings and approaches and practices, basically, considering our different mental interests, capacities, and to suit those needs of ours.
Jiti kam ta zambil cha ya bi na zambil na le chulun ra ma ra mang bo yo res ndu choma lo so so ra na ga samba de samba ji song za ni ji go ba chim bo ji yo res.
In a general sense, I feel that in our world there are many great religious traditions, and I believe that each tradition has its own merits. Considering that individuals have different interests, spiritual interests, and they require different spiritual approaches, and they would like to accomplish different spiritual goals. So it is in that sense, I think that the diversity of religious traditions we have in the world is a good thing.
Ma mevan shawa tang gwebe yoji chamalo ngaran chota ani niga da thadu dewa tu chamalo ngaran chol chamalo le kyudung ke chamalo yungu gores number chamai bi chamalo yugu gores.
So underneath all these great religious traditions of the world, what I see is that all of us as individuals share a lot of similarities all of us, disregarding what religious traditions we follow, we would like to find the best solutions to our problems. In other words, we do not want to have any kind of problem and suffering, and we do not like misery. So we want to put an end to misery, and we are all same in that. We would also like to find, lasting peace and happiness, and the best of everything. So again, in that regard, we are all just the same. So I think all these different religious traditions have come about or presented in order to recognizing that we as individuals have those different types of aspirations. We do not want any kind of problem and suffering. We want to put an end to that for good. We want to find lasting peace and happiness and find a way to accomplish that.
다 참말로 최종의 참말로 타두게니 토자들도 토야 쳇다 아 멘트서 다 참말로 빠야가 쳇다 딱 가르고 그래서는 아니 이 현대 현세보다 하장보다 이 샤체 장바 좀 많이 배 되게 되게 아무 딱 가르고 그래서는 자외 가르고 그래서는 나랑 저기 줄에 옆에 당시 말을 받대 딱 최종의 참말로 요하다 그래서 참말로서는 최종의 다 수시조 참말로 줄이게 돼요. 손자 때 매가 적고 그래서.
And I also feel that we and others are all just the same in that deep down inside us we have a grasping at self, truly existent I or self. And we need to uproot that grasping in order to be free from all kinds of suffering and in order to find lasting peace and happiness. And so that being our goal, if you will, now what is or are the best and most effective methods to counteract our grasping. Of course, we engage in many different religious, what we call practices or activities, such as making offerings, or doing prostrations, or paying respect to holy beings, or reciting mantras. Yes, these are, important in their own ways. But simply reciting mantras or incantations, simply making prostrations or offerings and of doing such practices is not enough, is not sufficient to counteract our grasping at self.
손자다 단지 마리파티 빠양 쳇다 가르고 그래서는 단지 마리파티 and 진수이때다 아니 응응게 땅게 등이 다 다음에 또 히르데 랑지셰비 탑셰부 그래서.
So what I've just explained or mentioned in very few words is that each of us has within our own state of mind grasping at self. That state of mind grasping is, as a matter of fact, the deep-seated ignorance, if you will. So often it is referred to as the ignorant conception of grasping at self. Now that's the root cause of all our problems. Now in order to counteract that kind of ignorance, we have to find an antidote that really, how should I say, contradicts the mode of perception of that grasping. Because that grasping perceives self or I to exist in a particular way, which is, by the way, the wrong way or the misconception. And now we need to find an antidote that can, that can contradict that mode of apprehension of self. So it is in that regard, we talk about the wisdom realizing selflessness. It is this wisdom which can directly contradict the mode of apprehension of self by our grasping. So because of that, this is the solution and the most effective solution to counteract our grasping at self.
So, dancing, Maribati, Ra Datun Zimbati, Trampe, and then Migi Lenats of Sangure, that Damet of Herote, Tetan Zentangos and Gene, Dameva, Tong, Dameva told it, and any yen that Numu Perictan Zote, Danzika, Numu Ring Joseti Pacani, the kind of Numu Pericta, and the Pang Baina, Numu Pericta Pang.
So it's very important for us to find out the mode of apprehension of self by our own grasping. And because it is this grasping at self from which all other forms of negative afflictive emotions or delusions arise, and then under the influence of grasping at self and other forms of delusion, that we create and accumulate tremendous amount of negative karmic actions, and then the result is suffering. And so now in order to counteract the grasping at self, we need to cultivate the wisdom realizing selflessness, because this wisdom perceives the self to exist, you see, in the right mode of existence. And once we cultivate this wisdom, then it counteracts our grasping at self. And as the grasping at self is diminished or eliminated for good, then we are able to free ourselves from the delusions and negative karmic actions.
Rana socially, and a good sort and summer unit, and a Tiza Marie Rangulia bit Maripatres. Can you tell it that over 10 driven juveniles? That is Mariba and Dover Cheval Carlos, 10 Tongo Race Gun.
It is, for those reasons that great Tibetan master Manjushri Lama Tsongkhapa, who is also known as Rinpoche or Yawa Losantapa, and as Geshe quoted the lines from his memory, Rinpoche said, all kinds of misfortunes or misery, the Tibetan term is kuba, that which is miserable or that which is problematic, it arises from that ignorance, which is its root cause, meaning ignorant grasping at self, is the root cause of all our miseries, all the things we do not want. So what can really help us to cut through that ignorance or get rid of it? Then Rinpoche says, Kangsi Thoma, seeing what can we eliminate or counteract that grasping, if you ask, then he says we need to realize the meaning of dependent arising, or in Sanskrit called pratit samutpat. The Tibetan term is tenjung. If we understand dependent arising, what it really means as a concept at the deepest level, then we are able to get rid of that ignorance.
Soncha, Sangi Kamdi de Dolin Lucinta, Kanki, any day in the region of Tonte, Chur Tonsen, Tovani, Damitovic, Dami turned over his gun. Dami returned over day, Chur Tonte, then in the region of Tonres, Lucinta, Kanando.
Historical teacher Shakyamuni Buddha himself stated in a sutra that one who sees dependent dependent arising or pratit samutpad sees the reality. The reality that we are talking about is the ultimate nature of phenomena called emptiness, shunyata or sunata, tongpanyi in Tibetan. And the one who sees this reality sees dependent arising, pratit samutpad.
Suntata, the Ligani Tongpanyi Gomni, Tongpanyi Tovina, Tovina, and then Rani quality Taguyaris. Yin at that Zamji, Tongpanyi Tova Zamji, and then Tangi Jimmy Conversanji Compared to Yamari.
So if we, realize what is emptiness, that kind of realization or insight will liberate us from all kinds of suffering for good, will liberate us from cyclic existence or samsara. And so we have we talk a lot about what is emptiness and the need to realize it to free ourselves from suffering and from ignorance. But as much as we emphasize all these things, but we must not lose the sight of a higher goal, if you will, that is realizing emptiness. Although it can liberate us from samsara or cyclic existence, but it is not a sufficient cause, to have us become a complete enlightened being or Buddha. In other words, the realization of emptiness is not enough, sufficient, path or practice or realization to become an enlightened being. So we need something more that we need to add to that in order to become a Buddha. That's where we talk about the need to cultivate the altruistic mind of enlightenment.
So that only the song and the Tony Nibu James, Tony Toya down, and the draw the Ducker, and then Tony Chibotan, and they shall use same thing about the Google.
So that's why we talk about an integrated path, of great compassion and the wisdom realizing emptiness, as well as altruism or bodhicitta. And so in other words, the realization of emptiness, which is characterized by, or which is, augmented by great compassion and bodhicitta, altruism, that kind of integrated path is necessary to find complete enlightenment.
That thing Shanju just sent that don't you to be here around you show a shovel, that thing Hundo cargo, Hundo tele, calling a friend doing angel shoot up with Tang ever the she would top Shego.
So we need the integrated path of bodhicitta or altruism and the wisdom realizing emptiness, which is called wisdom gone beyond, in order to become a complete enlightened being called Buddha. But in order to cultivate those paths, what else do we need as preliminary paths to cultivating those paths, if you ask? This is where we need to cultivate what is called renunciation or aversion to the misery in samsara or cyclic existence.
Sendela Kang Pe Gomni, Karsi, Koi Nimu Samni, and then Ninjuk Samba Kang She to the Shina, that Sendel Pe Jovachi Shematune, Shama Pinch Share Tap Shagrovas.
It sounds like easy to talk about the need to renounce samsara or cyclic existence or develop aversion to samsara. But when it comes to doing it or cultivating that kind of a path within our mind, it doesn't seem to be an easy task or a job. what we really need to do is, in this life, as much as we can, we need to investigate and contemplate the suffering nature of samsara or cyclic existence in which we find ourselves in. And the more we realize the suffering nature of samsara, and the more we think about it, that helps us to develop the sense of renunciation with regard to samsara, develop the sense of aversion to the misery in samsara. And that may happen this life, or that may not even happen in this life, but we could still make a great progress, you see, in that regard, so that we are able to continue our practice in our future lives and develop a sense of renunciation.
So that, Maopana, and then in Jungle Sambata, Shanju, Tony to be here and you share that Shevi, Sheguyore, Jevi Teluzon Guyore, the Chamba Shavala, Niansong Nel Humbayana, Tendigani, Ane, Tendigani, that. Chamba Shiju Ravat Devon of Sherry. In a whole songs and Tasha Shama Pengila, and Lam Drea Ketal, Ten Chabachi, the Anira and Rancho, Ten Chabachi to Niak, Todd Tarisha Gueris.
So, in essence, what I'm talking about here is we need to educate ourselves on the three principal paths: renunciation, altruistic mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta, and the wisdom gone beyond, the wisdom realizing emptiness as it is. But as we study and practice, Dharma in this life, we may not necessarily be able to have these paths within our own mind. But nonetheless, we should make the best of our efforts to cultivate them so that we make a tremendous progress, in those regards. But also, as I just mentioned, that we need to set forth our hopes and hopes that we are able to continue these practices in our future lives. So that means finding a favorable good rebirth in the next life or the future lives is very important and essential, as a matter of fact. Imagine, being reborn in a bad migrations, say in a hell or in a hungry ghost world. Can we practice really or make a tremendous progress at the things we are talking about now? Probably not. See? So we do not want to be reborn in an unfavorable situation where we are handicapped spiritually and we couldn't make progress. So we would rather like to find this kind of fortunate rebirth, which is called a favorable life basis for spiritual development, so that we're able to pursue our spirituality in our future lives and make further progress in our spiritual development.
Lam cho drubla tsenyi tsangwi tens, lam ku cho drubla shepala tsenyi tsangwi tenji nye gu res. Tsenyi tsangwi ten karre zana, tsenyi tsangwi ten, manye padu sashe meong wes. Tsenyi tsangwi tenji manye na, ane cho droya yungu ya mara, cho droya ka ane lo she ya kira khapo res. Ane te masangbi jolas, tsenyi tsangwi, cho drubla ten, ta tsenyi tsangwi tenji thoya ka, so
what I'll just explain to you is not something I just cooked it up. But I base my teachings in the authentic works of great master Rinpoche or Mantra Sri Lama Tsongkhapa. Again, Geshe quoted the lines from his memory, where basically Rinpoche tells us that unless we find a fully characterized favorable life, it would be rather very difficult, if not impossible, to make good progress in our spiritual development and move towards our spiritual goals or destinations. So therefore, one should make efforts to create the necessary causes in order to find a favorable life. Okay. So this is what basically Jeremiah is telling us, that we also need to create the favorable causes to find favorable life in the future, so that we are able to pursue our spiritual practice and development.
So that Tanji Zambo Chudria ten the Kare Jo Karesana, and Digba Ponchina, Miguel Rick the Pon, and they gave it to lunch children Yabu Sungur, social Sunguya Trimta, social Sonja Kari and the Trimde Yabu Sunshi. That Megate to Sum Gung Sukayama, they Yabu Sung. Ah, the nation that day any deal as so passy to draw shit. And then Malon Tama with some jar, 2 7 and then retain Yabu Togoyoris, Togoyor.
So what is he talking about when he said we need to create causes for a favorable life that is called fully characterized life basis, 10, literally translating, for spiritual development? What we're really talking about in a simple way is finding what is called fully endowed human life, or what we often call precious human life, that is characterized by freedoms and enriching factors which enable us to make spiritual progress like anything. And in order to find such a life, which we experience now, we need, in a general sense, abandon negative karmic actions. Don't do anything negative. Do that which is positive, or create positive karmic actions. We need to abide by what is called pure ethics, moral discipline, whatever ethics we commit ourselves to observe. And we also need to augment our ethical practice with other perfections, such as the perfection of generosity. And we need to do pure dedication of our merit, our practice to find a good rebirth and to find spiritual realizations. So when we do those things, that's what we call creating causes for a favorable life basis. And as you can see, that doesn't necessarily seem to be an easy task either. And what is really key in all of this is to, observe pure ethics. Now, in this regard, I would say there's nobody in the world who does not need to, let's say, abide by what we call the ethics of abandoning 10 negative actions of body, speech, and mind. That kind of ethics is a very foundational, basic practice which is applicable to one and all. Nobody is exception to this ethics. I mean, nobody can say like, I don't need to do that. So at a very basic level, all of us need to abandon the 10 negative actions of body, speech, and mind in order to find good rebirth.
다 다랑에 도신나 주베테 나는 참말로 이다 산도에 지인스 다 대나네 다 개치기로 그래서 민중 산세 양답에 따왔음부터 다 최두지 나네 최두지 그 최가 나다 류당아다 있음시 개외 샤워 두지에 돼 이번에 때 등주 그 나네 다 개치기 그래서 민중다 상주선 동의도 비켜를 란주리 셰위 탑시에다 So as I often do, that I have taken some time today to explain these things which I feel are very important for all of us to think about and try to put into practice. And of all the things I just explained thus far this morning, the most important ones are for each of us to study and cultivate what is called the 3 principal paths, sometimes translated as 3 principal aspects of the path. Basically, a sense of renunciation,
bodhicitta or altruistic mind of enlightenment, bodhisattva's attitude, and the wisdom realizing emptiness called wisdom gone beyond. Each of us has got body, speech, and mind, three things. And it is through these three things we function, we exist, and we survive. So we should use our actions of body, speech, and mind in whatever way we can to learn about and to cultivate these three principal paths.
This is the Kakisan Shachamba said in the Dingman of some. Kakisan and the G. No, I never translate pay Garsaurta. She ended of Johnson in the Dingman of some. That the nigger Yoloto Yarabati, Digman to us. The church only to the singular. Senjun de Yaka Cheder Solza, Senju do Tugum de Tagramato, Tagachek Bay, Dicta Carsagurta. So any rechokes on the Shagana, Tizamato, Sanomatona, and Jachunturia Maris.
One of the most important points that I'm trying to get across to you is this, that, in order for us to be able to free ourselves from secret existence, find liberation and enlightenment, we need to cultivate spiritual paths, especially the three principal paths which I just mentioned. So in Buddhism, we emphasize a lot on the education and the practice of the structure of the path, because complete structure of the path is provided in Buddhism, which need to be studied and which need to be followed, and so that's the way we can make progress on the path towards our spiritual goals. While it's really good, to do prayers, to do prostrations, to do mantra recitations, I don't mean that's, something we shouldn't do. But if we only do those things as if we are caught up with the ritualistic aspect of the practice, we do these things like a ritual. Okay, I got to do, my ritual here today. But we really don't pay attention to the real contents and the substance of the Buddhism, which basically are the three principal paths. What are they? How can I cultivate them? And all of that. See, if we don't pay attention to these things, then we won't really be able to be free from samsara and become an enlightened being, because that's not possible. Simply reciting mantras, simply doing prayers, simply doing some kind of recitations and prostrations, those are important, but only those important, in relation to these key practices. So that's what I want everybody to keep in the mind and understand, that in Buddhism, it's a very vast and profound, complete structure of the path is provided, which we have to learn about and which we need to put into practice and to, do that.
That curiosity. Church then that thing around to some which was. Church said that sounds good, dancing the war. Just a church around the same thing. New but the never told it to church to dot it, till it's a dot, Tarry Tapshani, and they rank same day, give a shoal, Pandro to edge, the legal cigarettes, give a shoal pie, that tinking cigarettes.
So when we say that I am going to practice Dharma. Dharma is a Sanskrit term, which in Tibetan is translated as Che, and in English we call it spirituality, or we use the term Dharma. It has many levels of meaning. It is a polysemantic term, many meanings in Sanskrit. Perhaps the most important meaning of the term Dharma or Che, spirituality, is that it has a sense of transformation or change. Che means to change. Okay? So to change for better, not for worse. And so when we say that I am going to study and practice Dharma, that means I want to change myself in a positive way. So how does that work? I want to tame my mind. I want to discipline my mind so that my mind is changed in a positive direction, that it is getting away from negativities and delusions, that is always moving in a positive direction, that it is engaged in positive actions, positive thinking. So when this kind of thing happens, that's what we call transformation. A good change is happening. Okay, so that's the sense of Dharma. So we should not get too much caught up with the ritualistic aspect, which may or may not affect the change. If it doesn't affect the change, then just figure it out. Are we practicing Dharma? And so that's important to keep in our mind. The sense of Dharma means to change, to transform in a positive sense.
The transform that same me give it solid dog give it solid to grebe tap the choose it was.
So Dharma in the is if you would like, it's a formalized path or a method which should help us to bring about that kind of a positive transformation inside us, or a change, that it helps us to, Dharma helps us to, distance our mind from negativities and delusions, take it away from them, and that it associates with the positive actions and positive thinking, that it really gets involved in doing positive things. So this is what the Dharma is all about. It is the practice, it is the method, it's the path which enables us to do that.
Now we will
go back to where we left off in this wonderful text called a miscellaneous collection of Kadampa Geshe's advices.
Okay. That taught us Korean Danzab Dennis she message give your maravas Tabe comes hits Toronto any be doing not so by Union Korean Damzab Masudi zone of Peta need the same Kangape any Korean Damzab Masudi and Notion that doing only did you are Maresca now. And Kari is an Antabe Taba and Damizan Mazubashi, Kamsel, Pa, and then Rotoyatas, Rotoba.
Great Indian Master Atisha goes on to advise us that, first let me translate the statement literally. It says, "Oh friends, there is no real happiness being stuck in this mud of samsara, cyclic existence. You should try to, bring yourself on the dry land of liberation." So what Adish is basically saying is, it seems like you are stuck in this mud, quagmire of cyclic existence of samsara. It seems like you are drowning in it, and there's really no fun and happiness, being in that state. So instead, try to get yourself out of the mud and just move on to the dry land of liberation, freedom.
That told us the Hakobshe. Well,
I think everybody should understand when he says, "Oh, friends," right? We know what friends mean. And then he says, in the mud of samsara or cyclic existence. So how do you understand samsara or cyclic existence? What is it? So do you think of samsara or as some kind of a special geographical location? It's some kind of a territory where if you live on those territory, then you are in samsara?
Causing it Rangi Dibaki English. Shadam Pagepa causing it. Jalan of the Maris, the Erosion, the Yahweh, and you get in the Diggerwas. Milk day in the Diggerwas, Chulgo in the Diggerwas.
But when we talk about samsara or cyclic existence, korva, it is something that is related with our own consciousness. That's important to know, the link between samsara and our state of mind. Samsara is not something out there that has nothing to do with, that has no relationship with our state of mind. And if this is like an object, well, that's the good news for us. Well, the things we don't like, we get rid of them. Just burn them, just give them away or throw them away, do something, which we can easily get rid of. But samsara is not that. It's not a material thing or object that you can just kind of get rid of. And if samsara is one of those external objects like a house, well, if you don't like the house, just, get rid of it. Just, go away somewhere else.
Move out. So, causing it the Ranji Dibaki, Core Kanekina, Jiji Madibi Kotan Yajiamaris.
But we couldn't do that. Why? Because samsara or cyclic existence is something that is related with or conjoined with our own state of mind. So when we talk about samsara, we must always see that it has a connection, a link to our state of mind.
Sake never lempi, Pumbo data, answer the Pumbo line was that the zoo and the court Chadigarista.
So if you ask me, give the examples of samsara or cyclic existence, then I say are 5 contaminated physical and mental aggregates. We have these contaminated psychosomatic aggregates, physical and mental aggregates. That's what samsara is, cyclic existence is.
Ran Nesaka, Ran Koala Kosa to Karisana, Kora Kosa Kitsananda, Kora, Ran Kol Nesati, Ranjili Pungung Abuti, Chaguaris.
So when we say we are in samsara or cyclic existence, we are roaming about in samsara, what basically we need to think about is how we get trapped in this contaminated physical and mental aggregates. So we are dwelling within these aggregates, contaminated, which is samsara for us.
Call a corsiati, Jonas Hakovior.
So we use the expression kor, means you go round and round about in samsara. So you know what it means, go round and around, don't you?
So that Karesana, Ranjila Yepe, Leta Yomoni Buti, and the tea couldn't hanita, those in the couriers, so couriers, making that cordon and some tongue, so some tongues.
So how do we go, round and round in samsara? What makes us do that? Are we crazy? Just keep on doing it willingly or purposely? Not. The forces behind, our kind of going round and round in samsara are deluded states of mind, or called delusions, kleshya in Sanskrit, nyönmong in Tibetan, and contaminated karmic actions and karma. So because of these two factors, we just keep on taking contaminated aggregates again and again and again and again. So that's how we, find ourselves trapped in these contaminated aggregates, and that's what we meant by going round and round in samsara.
Young Damjan Susan, Court and Damzepshi. Pina Susan, they can just cover some ways, Masud and Dabana Masud. They call that cover.
And now, looking at the way the statement is presented, that we are stuck in the mud of samsara. Now, are you thinking that, well, if I'm stuck in the samsara, how am I going round and round in samsara? I'm stuck.
Language in Namsuna, that's all the treasure of what that came into us. So, thank you so much. That's some the thank you message in Dam Subina, so the treasure was there.
So think of an elephant that got stuck in a mud. If there's nobody around to help this elephant to get out, then probably this elephant will get stuck and drown and just, die in this mud. But in the case of an elephant stuck in a mud, if the elephant is lucky, maybe there are those, strong people around that they could help pull out the elephant out of the mud. But the situation of our getting stuck in the mud of samsara is different. If we want to be out of this mud, we need to, make our own efforts. Other people cannot literally pull us out of this mud of samsara as they could do with the elephant. So that's why the elephant is lucky. But we can't hope that other people will, throw a rope at us and we catch it and get out of this mud of samsara. That doesn't work. We need to, make our own efforts and free ourselves from this mud. And there is the individual responsibility involved.
And then you should have been God got tangled on it. The gun I somebody sugar that they cover of us.
Well, then you might be wondering, okay, then what is this? As Buddhists, we believe in Buddhas, aren't they supposed to pull us out of the mud? Or if you're Christians, shouldn't the God be really pulling you out of the mud? Or if you believe in any other religions, maybe Allah should be pulling you out of the mud? So what are they doing, supposed to be there?
That's something that may have a tight in yours. Danny Dag going to say soon, that's a maze. Tuna do a tree, Martin Roydon, a meet again. Can you never think of Georges? Need trade any trade in Yamslani, so to see Yape, Yan Damni and don't to a shagres, can yours.
Well, I can only speak for Shakyamuni Buddha, what he said, not for the others. Buddha said, Tanya Tagi Gwende, as Geshe quoted line, means you are your own protector. You're your own, guide. Okay? Who else can be your protector? And Buddha also made it very clear in a very famous statement. Let me quote in Tibetan. Hopefully I remember this in Tibetan and then translate it. Buddhas do not wash others' negativities and delusions with water. They cannot do that. Buddhas cannot remove suffering of sentient beings, pull out the suffering of sentient beings just like they can pull out a thorn from somebody, pricking someone. They can't, literally, remove the suffering of beings with their hands. They cannot transfer their realizations, compassion, wisdom, love into others. They cannot say, okay, take these gifts, then you can free yourself out. Can't do that. So what can they do? Simply by revealing the truth, the realities as they are or as it is, that they help sentient beings to be free from their predicament. So that's what the Buddha said. He said, you're your own protector. I can only show you the truth, and then you do it what you like,
That's something
First, we should, make efforts not to get stuck in the mud of samsara.
Make pie, I was doggers. Make my day best in those Tommy Chimney and the souls and they are where I we have to be mindful of our, thinking and actions, so that we are not like a person who is not using his eyesight properly and just walking very clumsily and then, falls into a mud. You don't do that. Be mindful of our thoughts and actions. That comes to hicks. Damn the sooner Yagoya Maris, Kiboya Maris, so that tele any cancer. Comes at the Tabe Compana Pine, Joshua Scanner.
So if it is not fun to be in a mud, stuck in a mud, then where should we go? What is the alternative? Well, try to move out and be on a dry land, a good environment. So if samsara is not a good, situation to be in, then what's the better alternative, you ask? It's the state of liberation, nirvana. So we should move to the land of freedom and nirvana.
That council is pandrox already, and then Rotang is
So Aditya says, don't get stuck in the mud of samsara, but move to the dry land of freedom and nirvana. Now the question is, how can we move there?
Yeah. Ngaranzo ne church ni she at Samalo. Tave council pan roya candes broke emete. That the Karsigurta Yanis Namid Shiguris, Toji Shiguris.
So this teaching that we are all participating in, that I'm giving you the teaching, that you are listening to the teaching, and this whole study and practice of Dharma that we are talking about and we are trying to do is the method by which we are able to move to the land of freedom and nirvana.
Sanjay Jisumbi that thing is Samalo. And Tabe Kamsal Pa. Doctor condition dog yame, and then Gachin condition, Gachin the past condition segu yame, and it someone who can now was that's a thing and so race.
The entire teachings of Buddha, which are contained in sutras and which are contained in the commentary treatises on Buddha's teaching called Shastras, all those teachings provide us the ways or the means or the methods or the practices by which we can get ourselves out of the mud of samsara and move to the land of freedom and nirvana.
That was take Mambolo. And they Lijan of the church is in Congress person ye. Do she so say and the church it is and church at Tamaki there. That's how long we are.
So it's also very important for us to understand that whatever we study in Dharma, that we learn from Dharma talk, that we learn from Dharma teaching, that we learn from Dharma discussion, that we learn from reading Dharma books, is to be put into practice. Okay? So don't get into the habit of, if you will, that reading a lot of books on Dharma or going to every Dharma talk, every Dharma teaching, and then you have to think like, okay, now what do I practice? Well, that's not a good thing, you see, because everything we learn about Dharma is to be put into practice.
Church initiated so say Nyalan that the name Dinin Zani, Dinan Zan maybe some of the that show in that can do it. Say that Chimina, that they are going on.
So if we get into this kind of a mindset that, study Dharma is one thing. So I go and study about Dharma at different Dharma centers, different Dharma talks, different Dharma discussion groups, different books, different teachings. And then when it comes to practice, okay, now I have to find somewhere else. Where do I find the practice? That is not a good thing. That we are not, doing it right way. Because whatever we study, learn, that's what we need to put into practice. Because we cannot separate the study and practice from each other. Study one thing and find the practice somewhere else. That is not right.
Jerome Kanayores, to some going to Zin, Lik Damni, Lutin Corritori Dorifus, then Turba the Samba to Gombe, Trud Pat, Yahweh Zenis, to some going to Zin Lik Damtis. The Yama to Tawe Danki, that and the Google Marta, Turba the Samba to Gombe, Truya, which is Zenis. Then, Trudy Nanita, Ran Tabata Maze, Yen Lukin, Yen Ani, Tabata Tangi Gomalapa, Tito Hostan and Dua.
As Manju Shri Lamazongaba or Venerable Geshe tells us, in a very poetic expressions, which I cannot do justice in my translation on the spot, Geshe quoted the stanza poetry from his memory. So basically what he's saying is he's using the listening to teaching or study, contemplation and meditation metaphorically like a boat or a ship. If we want to cross, ocean, we need to build a good ship, or a boat. The kind of boat we're talking about here is the boat of study, contemplation and meditation. and that has a good sail, so that it can really help us to cross the water or the ocean. And not only that, we ourselves are able to cross the water of samsara by using this boat. Maybe we are also able to help others to get on the boat and and move in the direction of liberation and enlightenment. So I am stopping like about 10 minutes early today, and I only explained one statement of Adisha from the text, but I talked about other things before that. So I thought I have given a lot of things for all of us to think about and contemplate, and so I would advise that everyone, all of us, should think about the things I highlighted and talked about today, that you could do the thinking before you go to lunch, or you can do the thinking after you finish lunch. But things that after you finish lunch, don't fall asleep, because if you are going to think it, you can't sleep.
Manas, I think this time to hear you.
Tatan, this is again the Iraq Nalia Mark and Mima with the Jadon Chimberwagan. Oh, yeah. I just don't is a mammy, the Nepal, Miss Chisum Shidwagan. That lost his called or did on the America. America Mammy Chisum. America Mamma again, Tongbani houses. Iraq means Chisum Shidwan. Oh, that's an injury. The Geshes on again. What is we have a request, to pray for all the victims of the Iraq war. I think this is the 4th anniversary, if I got it right, that we have lost over 2,000, lives of our soldiers, and over 30,000 Iraqis died. And we always talk about the human beings, but think of other non-human beings who died in this war, and let's all remember them and send our prayers and thoughts for their well-being and for good rebirths.
Oh yeah, and then no. Would you tell him I get to read? Korani that June put it nashe. Magic Pinja Chagas, Pinjas the Umber. Already that telling artists in Kora, Yama Geturi, any Junbo, New Junbo Hibishes. That Casa Tronges. Is that Tila Anita, Ki Shava Shimala, the Tenzan Toyata. Tenzan Tobasa Mazet, Tambi Chet and Jeta. Chet, or Tambi Chet and Jenny, Chet Yankalani, and then Motoba ran against the Sanjo Matoya, Ani, one of Jeroshis. Until the Anita Mal, and they don't sweat and someone attack Pim Messiah, attack Ducker. Quans on winning to need that go over to you to toilet, that Mimma which you saw that they which she or they saw that some along around Jota. They don't seen some batonzo, and then Zambo Toya Moata. That Jesu and the Mayoga. You think you can't mount to that when it did Mayoga, Mantabris.
Another request has been made to Geshe that one of his students from a long time, he was sick for a very, very long time. His name is Arthur, and he passed away recently. So as we think about the victims of our Iraq war, also including Arthur and others who have passed away, we remember them and we wish them good rebirths, and we wish them to be able to come into contact with the spirituality and be able to pursue spiritual path leading to spiritual destinations. And as we think about this war, in one way, from for a small purpose, so many people's lives have been destroyed, and that's very unfortunate. And we also pray that no such wars ever take place, either in our world or any part of the universe. May there be no war, no, suffering in any part of the world.
아니 저 이기는 비트에 댄지시브 담만지 고세 협의 때마다 투지인도서 담에 멜hun도 용하다. 최 생각이 쇼 포만은 퀸디 샤원은 이전던 로바다. 이제 이제 감대다 현도 인터뷰 그조타다 현이 튼진으로 타다 멜hun도 용하시.
Let us dedicate our collective marriage for the flourishing of Dharma, the source of benefits and the happiness throughout the universe. May His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all other great holy beings, wherever in any part of the universe, live long and be successful in fulfilling their visions benefiting sentient beings. May spiritual communities throughout the world and spiritual practitioners from all traditions remain healthy, harmonious, and be successful in fulfilling their spiritual aspirations. May this and other world environments be free of all kinds of unwanted pains and problems, and beings find peace, happiness, prosperity, and spirituality. In short, we dedicate our marriage for all kind mother sentient beings to be free from the fears and dangers of two types of mental obscuration, and may we all reach complete enlightened state quickly. me to drama re ro ni je ni de yen bo sang ye ye lo me de go wa ye ro ko na da jen lo she go ro ye dong na go ro no ma de lo ko ni ya da yo me
you are
second is the day I think of it all.
three sanyi sanyi